After my wife pushed me away in bed, telling me not to touch her because she had dignity, I decided to answer her with the same coin the next day, and when I denied her demands, she was the one who ended up losing control. I'm David, 36. My wife, Chloe, became convinced that she could treat me like garbage while I financed her comfortable life, and then acted surprised when I stopped behaving like her personal ATM. For the first 6.5 years of marriage, we had a stable relationship. Nothing extraordinary, but also nothing destructive. We met at a logistics conference in Dallas. We were brought together by the terrible hotel coffee and the most boring conferences on the planet. Back then, she worked in event organization, had her own projects, and earned enough. We dated for 1.5 years before getting married. We bought a house on the outskirts of Chicago and followed the basic manual of the American dream. We traveled when we could: Nashville, Austin, Colorado. She went out with her friends, I went out with mine. We shared weekend plans, had dinner at her favorite restaurant, watched movies on the couch, and lived a routine that was as common as it was functional. Nothing to inspire a sad song or a divorce lawsuit. But about 5 months ago, everything started to change. First, there were subtle comments that I didn't put enough effort into dates, that my dinner ideas were boring, that I should cook less and order food more often. Then she started correcting me in public as if I were a student making mistakes in class. "Your friend's name is Robert, right?" "No, George." "We traveled to Mexico." "No, Miami." "That was your other job, right?" "This one." At this stage, her friend Valerie also began to appear more often, a real estate agent who drives a white Audi and turns any conversation into a sales pitch. Divorced twice, an expert in collecting alimony, and always with theories about how other people's relationships should work. Since she entered the circle, Chloe repeated speeches about equal effort, emotional appreciation, and deserving better treatment. And I listened to everything in silence, trying to understand where so much discontent came from. Because if we talk about effort, my weeks are usually 60 hours coordinating logistics for a transportation company. I pay the mortgage on our 4-bedroom house. I paid off her student loans last year, and her car is in my name because her credit history was destroyed before we met. I'm not an absent guy. I don't smell like cigarettes when I come home or disappear until the early morning. I'm just a man who works and tries to keep everything running. But still, I didn't say anything. I thought it would be a phase. Maybe she was stressed about turning 31. Maybe Valerie filled her head with ideas. I went on with my quiet life, hoping it would pass. It didn't. 3 months ago, she quit her job in event organization. Before that, she left a position at a foundation because the hours were too exhausting. And before that, there was another job that also didn't work out. Since January, she has been unemployed, dedicating her days to yoga classes and lunches with friends while I sort out shipments between Cleveland and Atlanta. I didn't say anything. I paid the bills and kept my mouth shut, hoping she would get back on track. 2 months ago, the distance began to show in the bedroom. First, there were excuses: tiredness, headaches, wanting to sleep. Then came the more obvious physical rejection: pulling away when I touched her, curling up on the opposite edge of the bed as if I were contagious. Each night weighed more heavily than the last until the breaking point arrived. I was checking something on my phone before bed. Chloe finished her routine and lay down with her back to me. I put the phone down, moved closer to kiss her, touched her gently, and she reacted as if I had burned her. "Don't touch me. I have dignity." She said it without looking at me. When I asked her what that attitude meant, she turned with a harsh expression, as if playing a long-rehearsed role. My body, my decision. I am not going to let someone who doesn't appreciate me touch me. I tried to keep calm. I asked her what she didn't appreciate, and she exploded with a speech she had given before. That I thought money was love, that I didn't see her as a person, that I didn't value her. When I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity, she became angrier. "You haven't done any emotional work. You don't even notice what I do for this house." All I could think was, what exactly are you doing if you haven't worked in 5 months and spend the day at brunch with Valerie talking about how hard life is? She turned red and finally screamed, Get out! Get out of this bed right now! At first, I thought it was a strange test, some emotional tactic, but there was no doubt in her voice, so I took my pillow and left. Good luck paying the bills with so much dignity, I said before closing the door and heading to the guest room. I stared at the ceiling as I listened to the house creak, and everything took shape in my head. It wasn't a phase, it wasn't stress, it was a unilateral change of rules, and she expected me to accept it without question. But that was over. I've always been good at playing defense, but I'm also very good at going on the offense. After a while, I heard Chloe in the bathroom doing her nightly routine as if she hadn't ruined 7 years of marriage over a goodnight kiss. I didn't go back to talk to her or apologize. I just thought about my next move. I took out my phone and texted Robert. Got time for a drink tomorrow? Need to talk. He replied in half a minute. Sure. Is everything okay? I texted back, define okay. I woke up early out of habit. The house was still silent. I didn't know if she was sleeping or pretending. I showered in the guest bathroom, went downstairs to make coffee, and stayed there in the kitchen, understanding that what came next would mark a before and after. I was not going to continue tolerating that contempt disguised as morality. Just as I stepped out to get the newspaper, I saw our neighbor Teresa standing in her front yard. She is just over 60 years old. She has lived on this street since it was practically prehistoric territory and could run a national gossip registry without even getting out of her chair. Good morning, David, she called to me as soon as she saw me. You're up early. Everything okay with Chloe? Everything's fine, Teresa, I replied. She gave me that look, half curious, half suspicious, that she uses when she detects drama. Well, if you need anything, I'm here, she added meaningfully. I nodded and went back inside. Teresa is harmless, but when all this blows up, she will surely be the first to call a neighborhood meeting to discuss every detail, probably with casseroles and desserts included. At this point, the suburban gossip networks could teach the CIA a thing or two. Inside the house, Chloe was already awake in the kitchen, wearing leggings, a huge sweater, and glued to her phone. She didn't even look up when I walked in. Good morning, I said, just to see if she would react. She didn't. She continued swiping on the screen as if I were part of the furniture. I poured coffee and leaned against the counter. Are we giving each other the silent treatment now? I have nothing to say to you, she replied without looking at me. Perfect, I said calmly. Then don't expect me home tonight. I have plans. She finally looked up for half a second. What plans? Poker night at Robert's place. I said it naturally. I've been going to those nights for 6 years. Same group, same table, twice a month, like clockwork. On a Thursday? She asked. Yes, Chloe. On a Thursday, I said. Robert texted last night. He moved it up because George has a conference this weekend. Incredible. She can ignore me all she wants until I mention something she can't control. That instant transition from indifference to concern is almost routine now. She put down the phone, crossed her arms, and changed her posture. You can't make plans without telling me. Well, I just did, I replied, rinsing my mug. And in fact, I'm telling you now. That's not how a marriage works, David. I turned and looked directly at her. Last night, you told me you didn't want me to touch you, that you didn't want me in our bed. You said to give you space. That's what I'm doing. You're welcome. She looked like she was about to lash out, but I was already walking out the door. At work, I survived solely on 4 hours of sleep and sheer stubbornness. 3 delayed shipments in Ohio, a client screaming about delays, my assistant manager calling out sick again. 4 hours on the phone solving other people's disasters, and then 2 more in a meeting that should have been an email. At noon, Robert texted me. Are you coming tonight, or was that text an SOS? I replied, both. He sent a laughing emoji, followed by, bring cash, I'm winning everything today. At 6, I was at his apartment. It's a total bachelor pad condo downtown. Leather furniture, huge TV, poker table ready. George had already arrived, stacking chips with his usual cold precision. He works in cybersecurity and never talks about his job. His deadpan humor makes him 10 times funnier. Philip, a sales representative in his second marriage and paying alimony to his first wife, was also there. "David, you look destroyed," Robert said as soon as I walked in. "What happened, Chloe?" I sank into a chair. "Exactly." "Say no more," Philip said, shuffling the cards. "Women are complicated. That's why I married twice." George raised an eyebrow without looking up from his chips. "And how is that strategy working out for you?" "I'm broke but happy," Philip replied. "You didn't sound so happy last week when you were crying about your bank account," George said emotionlessly. "I wasn't crying," Philip protested. Robert laughed. "Are we going to play, or should we open a group therapy session?" We were barely starting the first hand when there was a knock on the door. Robert opened it, and I heard her voice. "Chloe." She walked in as if the place were hers, with Valerie right behind her. "I hope you don't mind," Chloe said with false sweetness. "We were just in the neighborhood." Robert looked at me. I shook my head no. He's too polite to kick them out, although we all understood this was a premeditated ambush. "Of course, take a seat," he said. They settled onto the sofa behind the game table. Valerie immediately started asking how much rent Robert paid, if he owned the place or not, how big the apartment was, the typical stuff. Mid-hand, Chloe dropped the first bomb. "David, I bet you'll lose all your money again tonight." She said it loud enough for everyone to hear. The table went silent. I looked at Robert, George, Philip. Everyone avoided intervening. I stayed calm. "If I lose, it's my money. You aren't contributing any income right now." Her smile faltered. "Oh, don't exaggerate, it's just a joke." "Yes, hilarious," I said as I tossed a chip into the pot. Valerie let out a fake laugh. "Chloe's just keeping you humble, David. All men need that." I ignored her. I concentrated, but Chloe couldn't stay still. 20 minutes later, with a pot of almost $300, she let out another one. "David, maybe you should quit. Strategy clearly isn't your thing." George looked up for the first time. "Actually, he has the best win percentage after Robert," he said flatly. Chloe blinked, confused. "What, we keep statistics?" George added. "David has almost $5,000 in winnings over 2 years. Philip pointed at George with his glass. "Why did you have to say that just now? You make me look terrible." "It's just information," George replied. "Money isn't everything," Valerie said, trying to save her. "In poker, it is," George replied without looking. The attention of the four concentrated on me. Robert had a contained smile, as if enjoying the spectacle. I closed my hand, stood up, and grabbed my jacket. "I'm leaving." Chloe's eyes widened as if someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on her. "What? You're leaving?" "Yes," I said, looking at Robert. "See you later, buddy." He nodded, respecting me. "But why?" Chloe asked. And this time I heard the panic. I looked at her, then at the table, and back at her, because I don't play in places where I'm not respected. I walked out, the door closing behind me. Clean. No shouting. No scene. When I reached the elevator, my phone was already vibrating. Chloe calling. I declined. Valerie sending messages. I deleted them. When I got to the car, I already had 4 missed calls. I texted Robert as soon as I got in the car, saying I regretted causing a scene in the middle of poker night. He replied almost immediately, as if he had been waiting for my message. "Don't apologize, brother. That was the most entertaining hand of the year. No one is going to forget it soon," he wrote. That brought a slight smile, the first in hours, although I still had tension in my chest. Instead of taking the usual route home, I took the long one, skirting several neighborhoods and quiet streets. I needed to think. Chloe's appearance had been as unexpected as it was unnecessary. She came down with that air of superiority, ready to make me look incompetent in front of my friends. But when I simply packed up and left without playing her game, her face twisted in a mix of confusion and fear. She didn't expect me to end the discussion by walking out the door. She was looking for something else. She wanted me to follow her, to calm her down, to put myself at her disposal so she could adjust her narrative. I knew that pattern perfectly. When I got home, around 10 p.m., her car was already parked. I found her rigid in the living room, arms crossed, as if she had been rehearsing her speech for hours. "Seriously, David," she reproached. "Do you really think it was acceptable to leave me like that in front of everyone?" "You embarrassed me," I countered, heading up the stairs. "You arrived uninvited to a space that wasn't yours," interrupted my friends, and then tried to ridicule me. "That's your responsibility, not mine." "I was just trying to spend time with you," she insisted, raising her tone, as she always did when things didn't go according to plan. "You weren't trying to spend time." I stopped on the third step. "You were trying to prove something to Valerie, or maybe convince yourself that you still have control over me. I'm going to sleep in the guest room. You decide what you want from this marriage. I'm not going to keep guessing. You can't just," she tried to say, but I was already closing the door of the room, ending the conversation. In the dark, lying on my back, I knew this couldn't be fixed. The relationship was not superficially damaged. It was corroded from the foundations. I had exhausted all the healthy ways to resolve it. The next step was to take real action. Tomorrow, I thought, I'll call a lawyer. The next morning, Chloe was gone. She didn't leave a message, a note, a simple text. Nothing. The silent house felt more comfortable than I would have admitted months ago. I prepared my breakfast with a tranquility unknown for years. There were no shouts from the hallway, no out-of-place questions, no criticism of my way of toasting bread. I left for work with a serenity that even surprised me. Around noon, my phone rang. An unknown number from Milwaukee. I hesitated. I almost didn't answer, but some strange hunch made me pick up. "David," said a female voice, tense, with that cadence that only a person can have when they believe they are above others. "This is Patricia, my mother-in-law, the queen of passive-aggressive criticism, an expert in measuring every word to make anyone feel inadequate. For 7 years, she had been implying that I wasn't good enough for her daughter." "Hello, Patricia," I replied, maintaining the most neutral tone possible. "Chloe called me this morning, crying," she began without preamble. "She's very upset. She told me you've been distant for days, sleeping in another room, deliberately ignoring her." "I was at my poker night, Patricia. She arrived uninvited and started attacking everyone. She says you behaved hostilely toward everyone there. A wife deserves better. If she thinks she deserves better," I replied firmly, "then tell her to go look for it." "I am not going to allow you to lecture me." "How dare you?" she said, but didn't finish. I hung up. That afternoon, I went out onto the porch with a soda. Not 2 minutes later, Teresa, my neighbor, appeared, walking fast as if she had emerged from a shadow. "Moving out?" she asked without any pretense. "She went to her mother's house. She needed space," I replied. Without asking permission, she sat on my porch steps. "This is always a matter of resistance," she said without looking at me. "In marriages, the one who endures longer wins. You want it to work? Then be more stubborn than her." "I'm not competing with anyone," I said. "I'm just tired of being treated like the enemy." Teresa stood up, and before walking away, she added, "Then stop defending yourself all the time and start attacking." I didn't know exactly what she meant, but I understood the message. Stop reacting and start acting. 2 days later, Chloe returned, and of course, she was accompanied by Patricia. Patricia entered the house, moving cushions, adjusting curtains, and examining the order as if it were her property. "David," she said coldly, "we need to talk." "No, we don't need to talk," I corrected her. "This is between Chloe and me. I'm her mother. I have the right to get involved." "You are a guest here," I replied. "Behave as such, or you can leave." Her cheeks turned almost purple. Chloe intervened, as if acting in front of an audience. "See, that's what I mean. You're always hostile to everyone." "Your mother walked in, criticizing the house before saying hello," I explained. "What did you expect to happen?" I picked up my keys. "I'm going to Wisconsin this weekend." "Keep the house." "You can't just leave," Chloe protested. "Watch me do it." I drove the 3-hour trip in 2.5 hours. The cabin was the same, small, silent, surrounded by trees. I fished, read, cooked, and slept. I spent 2 days without a single mental argument and confirmed that I hadn't had that peace in my own home for years. I returned on Sunday. Chloe was calm, as if she had unloaded all her frustration on her mother. Patricia was gone. During the week, we lived almost in silence, a cold routine where each avoided the other. And on Wednesday, as I poured myself coffee before going to work, Chloe appeared with an envelope in her hand. "We have a couples therapy appointment," she announced. "I've already booked it for this Friday." "I'm not going," I said without raising my voice. "David, we need help," she insisted. "No." "Chloe, you need to decide what you want. I'm no longer going to be your emotional punching bag while you solve your internal problems." "I'm trying to fix this," she said, raising her tone. "Nothing is fixed by imposing things we didn't agree on or bringing your mother to attack me. That is not working on the relationship." Then my phone vibrated. A text from Robert. "Valerie is having a cookout on Saturday. You and Chloe are invited. I'll make up an excuse." I texted back, "I'm going. I want to see how this ends." On Saturday, we arrived at Valerie's house separately. I arrived first and stayed with Robert and George near the grill. The patio was ridiculously luxurious, a pool with a waterfall, an equipped outdoor kitchen, a magazine-worthy garden, life after divorce, in its premium version. Philip was telling an exaggerated story about a client who had bought 30 hospital beds for cash. The guy knew how to capture everyone's attention. 20 minutes later, Chloe arrived, and of course, Patricia was right behind her. They quickly joined Valerie and 2 other women, raising a chorus of shrill laughter that anyone would recognize as a warning. "This is going to end badly," Robert murmured. "Undoubtedly," I replied. "But I came to see it." "And why?" George asked. "Curiosity," I admitted. "I'm tired of sweeping the mess under the rug." Then Philip arrived with a plate full of burgers. "Your wife is looking at you like you've got one foot in the grave," he commented. We had been there for an hour when suddenly Valerie raised her voice from the other end. "David, can you help Chloe bring the plates?" It wasn't asked as a question. It was a public order, an attempt to gauge if I was still the obedient one in the group. Almost everyone turned to me. I looked at her. Then I looked at Chloe, who looked tense, and then I returned to my conversation without moving a muscle. "No, thank you," I replied with absolute calm. "I'm fine here." The silence that formed was so dense that even the grill seemed to stop sizzling. Valerie went from confusion to anger, then to embarrassment, and then back to anger. "Excuse me?" she snapped. "You have 2 arms and 2 legs," I replied without changing my tone. "You can surely handle some plates?" Chloe intervened with the built-up tension of the whole week. "David, don't be rude." "I'm not being rude," I said, staring at Valerie. "I'm just not going to take public orders in the middle of a barbecue. If you need help, you can ask for it like adults. I'm not the service staff." And everyone heard it. The first one to appear, as if she had been hiding, waiting for her moment, was Patricia, pointing at me as if I were an insolent teenager. Her tone was that of someone who believed she had authority over everyone. "You will not address these women like that again," she ordered, fixing her gaze on me. I took a deep breath and stood up, handing my glass to Robert. "Actually, Patricia," I replied with absolute calm, "I will talk however I please. This is not your house. You are not my mother, and I am done pretending that you can tell me how to behave." What followed was absolute silence. The children stopped running. The guy at the grill froze with the tongs in the air. Meanwhile, Chloe's face was flushed with frustration. "You're making me look bad," she snapped through gritted teeth. "No," I corrected as I walked toward my car. "You are making yourself look bad. I am just refusing to participate in it. Have a great event." And I left. Second event. Second abrupt exit. It seemed I was developing a trademark. As soon as I turned onto the street, the phone started ringing nonstop. Calls from Chloe, texts from Valerie, notifications that I completely ignored. 3 walkouts and 3 gatherings in 2 weeks. At least I was consistent. I decided to go to a restaurant, ordered dinner, and watched a game on TV. The phone didn't stop vibrating until I finally turned it off. It was the first real peace in days. When I got home around 9 p.m., the house was completely empty. There was a note on the counter. "I'm staying at Valerie's place. We need space." I crumpled it up and threw it away without a second glance. If that self-deception helped her sleep, so be it. On Monday morning, I called Marcia, the lawyer whose number Robert had given me months ago just in case. I told the assistant I needed an urgent consultation. "Wednesday at 2 p.m., she replied. The day came, and there I was in her office on the 17th floor with windows overlooking Lake Michigan and shelves full of law books. Marcia, with her hair pulled back and an analytical gaze, didn't seem to miss a detail. "Tell me everything from the beginning," she asked. So I did. I recounted everything. The rejection in the bedroom, the ambush at poker night, the mother-in-law invasion, the barbecue disaster. She took notes without missing a beat. "Does she work?" "Who financially supports the household?" "I do." "Whose house is it?" "Both on paper, but I paid the down payment, and the mortgage comes from my account." "The cars?" "Mine is in my name. Hers is in mine too because of her bad credit." "Children?" "No." "Good," she said. "That simplifies things. We reviewed the assets. The house valued at around $400,000. The mortgage is down to $260,000. My retirement accounts, premarital savings, and the cabin in Wisconsin." "The cabin is yours," she confirmed. "You bought it 6 years before meeting her. It's separate property. She can't touch it." "What's next?" I asked. "File the petition, serve her, move out, and cut all contact. In Illinois, it's a minimum of 6 months. More if she fights." "She's going to fight," I assured her. Marcia gave a half smile. "They always do until they see the lawyer's bill. Then they tend to become reasonable." I left her office with a clear plan. File, serve, move out, and cut everything. That same night, I started looking for an apartment. I found a flat downtown on the 12th floor with parking included. I signed the contract instantly. The move would be in 2 weeks. I didn't tell Chloe anything. She would find out soon enough. Over the next few days, I moved things to a storage unit, organized documents, and secured my finances. She was too busy with Valerie to notice. She barely stopped by the house, and I slept in the guest room. There were passive-aggressive notes from her everywhere, which I answered with silence and cash left on the counter before going to work. One morning, while loading boxes into my truck, Teresa, our neighbor, appeared. "Moving?" she asked without any subtlety. "Yes." She nodded as if she had been expecting it. "Good for you. Do you want some advice?" "Not especially, Teresa." She gave it to me anyway. "Don't let her make you look like the bad guy. Some women rewrite history to cast themselves as victims. Stick to your version." "Thank you, Teresa," I replied. And this time I meant it. On Friday, Marcia filed the papers. At 2 p.m., I received confirmation. The process server would go to the house on Monday morning. That weekend, I finished moving the last of my belongings. Chloe was in Milwaukee with Patricia, oblivious to what was coming. Monday at 9 a.m. Sharp, my phone rang 30 seconds after the process server arrived at the house. "What is this?" she yelled at me. "Divorce papers," I replied, completely calm. "I'm done, Chloe." There was silence. "You can't be serious. We can fix this." "I am serious, and no, we can't." She hung up. I waited for the immediate explosion, but instead I received nothing for 2 hours. Then a text arrived. "Can we at least talk in person?" "No," I replied. An hour later. "David, please, I know I made mistakes." Nothing. By late afternoon, the tone changed. "Are you really going to throw away 7 years like this?" "Fine. If this is what you want, then." The worst came the next day. At 7 a.m., I received a call. This time she was crying. I didn't know if the tears were real or calculated. "David, please, can we go to therapy? I can change. I'll do anything you want." "You had 5 months to change," I told her. "You chose not to. Now face the consequences." The tears instantly evaporated. "I'm going to fight you for everything," she threatened with that sharp tone I knew by heart. You're going to regret leaving me. Fight all you want. My lawyer is ready. I hung up. She tried to call back immediately. I declined and turned off my phone. That night, while organizing boxes in my new apartment, I heard loud banging on the door. I looked through the peephole. It was Chloe, red-faced, half made up, hair disheveled. "David!" she screamed. "Open up! We need to talk!" "No, we don't need to talk about anything," I replied from inside. "Please!" And she suddenly started crying again. I was confused. Valerie filled my head. "I'll cut her out of my life. I'll do anything." "Interesting," I said. "You've reached the negotiation phase. That usually takes longer. You must be very desperate. Go home, Chloe," I added. In a second, her voice changed. "This is your fault. You ruined everything. You gave up. You're weak." "I'm not going to continue," I replied calmly. "You have my lawyer's number. Talk to her." When she started yelling behind the door that night that she planned to take everything, the house, the money, my retirement, everything we had built, I couldn't help but stand still, listening to the desperate way her voice cracked between rage and frustration. "I'm taking absolutely everything," she screamed. "You'll be left with nothing." I just responded with a coldness that surprised even my own nerves. "You can try." I didn't expect those 2 words to enrage her further. She pounded on the door with such force that I thought someone in the hallway would call security any second. She alternated shouts with pleas, threats with hysterical crying. She seemed to switch from one emotional extreme to the other without any transition. It was 5 endless, noisy, tense minutes until building security finally arrived. I heard them escort her out of the hallway, and then my phone rang. "Sir, are you all right? Would you like to file a report?" "It's not necessary," I replied. "It's a personal matter. It's under control." But the truth was, it was only just beginning. What followed was a parade of calculated, impulsive, worn-out, and increasingly desperate attempts to regain control. Day 1. The soft mask of regret. The next morning, my phone vibrated with a series of texts so long they looked like small novels. Chloe wrote about reflecting, understanding her mistakes, wanting to rebuild trust, and even mentioned new beginnings. Everything sounded carefully crafted, almost read from a self-help blog. I didn't reply to a single line. Day 2. The negotiation rehearsal. This time it wasn't texts. It was her in person, showing up at my job with a coffee I didn't even know if it was my favorite. "Just give me 5 minutes," she said, clutching the cup like a lifeline. Security had to escort her out of the building again. Still, she stayed in the parking lot for a whole hour, sitting, checking her phone, getting up occasionally as if she was going to return to the entrance, and then, defeated, disappearing. Day 3. The messenger friend. Valerie found me at a coffee shop a few blocks from my office. I don't know how she knew I would be passing through there. Chloe had probably been monitoring my patterns for days, but the way she approached me made it clear she was on a mission. "Chloe is confused, David." "She needs support, not distance," she began, her tone almost practiced. I didn't let her finish. I stood up and walked out of the place. Her voice faded behind me as if it were part of the ambient noise. Day 4. The fury phase. The messages that day were something else. Pure textual venom. "You gave up on us. You're a coward. This is all your fault." It was almost impressive how quickly she could reinvent the narrative to turn me into the perfect villain of her story. Day 5. Coordinated social pressure. It was almost comical to see people I barely remembered start texting me about what it means to fight for a marriage or how Chloe was devastated and deserved another chance. I blocked them all. I had no patience for sermons from third parties who didn't even know what had happened. Day 7. Robert's warning. My friend Robert texted me with a direct summary. "Chloe is going around saying you abandoned her without reason, just giving you a heads up." I sent him a short reply. "Let her. The truth always finds its way out." On Friday afternoon, Marcia, my lawyer, called me. "She's saying she wants the house, alimony, and half of your retirement funds," she announced bluntly. I already told her to prepare for disappointment. "What do we propose?" I asked. "We offer her exactly what the law dictates. Nothing more, nothing less. In Illinois, distribution is equitable. She gets half of what belongs to the marriage, her share of the house and the retirement contributions made during those years. Alimony is not applicable because she is perfectly capable of working. If she doesn't accept, we go to trial, and she'll have to pay legal costs. That sounds perfect. It was simple, cold, and fair. Week 3. This was the moment Chloe decided her best strategy was to become a victim on social media. She posted vague texts about betrayal, disillusionment, and a ruined marriage, the kind of posts designed to fish for sympathy. Valerie, of course, shared them, adding comments about how men are useless. I remained silent. I never responded. I never clarified anything. I let her sink into her own digital theater. Week 4. I needed a break, so I invited Robert and George to spend the weekend at my cabin. Philip was supposed to join, but canceled due to domestic drama with his second wife, which was almost a characteristic of his life. On Saturday afternoon, the 3 of us were on the dock. The weather was perfect. A gentle breeze. The water barely moving, and that tranquility that only a secluded place can offer. George kept bragging about his 2 catches. Robert insisted that his technique was superior, although he hadn't caught anything. I was simply enjoying the calm. "This is the life," George said, reeling in a 3rd fish. "This is definitely the life." And then a noise broke the peace, a car driving down the dirt road. We froze. The cabin is so far from town that no one arrives there by accident. Nothing shows up on GPS. Whoever it was came on purpose. We heard the car door slam, then footsteps, heels on the gravel, and then her voice. Chloe appeared around the cabin like a shadow of her former self. Cocktail dress, high heels, makeup smudged from the heat or crying. I don't know. She looked out of place, as if she had driven directly from an expensive restaurant to the middle of the woods. "David, I need you to listen to me right now," she shouted when she saw me on the dock. George looked at me, as if asking if I wanted privacy. I shook my head no. "No, stay. This is only going to get more interesting." She advanced, staggering, almost falling a couple of times. Robert muttered something about civil liability, and I had to swallow a laugh. "You can't ignore me. I'm your wife," she demanded, extending an accusatory finger. "You are my future ex-wife," I corrected. "And you are also trespassing on private property." Silence. Only her ragged breathing. The dock is narrow, and she occupied it completely, as if extending her presence so no one could avoid her. "I came all the way here because I deserve for you to listen to me," she insisted. "I'm not interested. Go back to your house." "You destroyed everything. You ruined my life," she sobbed. "No, I stopped playing a manipulated game, one where you changed the rules so I would always lose." George let out a slight woof. Robert hid a laugh in his drink. "And who are they?" she asked, stumbling. "You've already replaced me." "They are my lifelong friends, the same ones you ignored for years." "That toast I gave you for your birthday took me 3 hours to write," George said with total seriousness. Robert burst into short, breathless laughter. "You're selfish. I didn't give you 7 years of my life," Chloe yelled, "and I paid for those 7. What did you give me besides problems and conditions?" She swallowed as if her last card was a magic word. "I loved you." "You didn't love me." "You loved the life I gave you." Her voice cracked. She looked exhausted, drunk on emotions she didn't know how to handle. I stood up and looked directly at her. "You humiliated me in front of my friends. You kicked me out of our bed for trying to kiss you. You brought Patricia, your mother, to attack me in my own house. You treated me like an employee. You made it clear that I wasn't enough for you. And that's why I left. That is your responsibility, not mine." She broke down crying with a lack of control I had never seen. Her makeup melted into black tears. "I was wrong," she mumbled. "Valerie told me I deserved better, and I believed her." "Valerie is divorced twice and miserable," I replied. "Do you really think that's the best place to seek marital advice?" She fell silent, as if, at that very instant, reality had finally revealed itself. Robert raised his glass with a calm smile, as if witnessing a spectacle instead of an emotional disaster. "I'll drink to that," he commented with a slight clink of glass. Chloe, on the other hand, had a contorted face. "You're being cruel," she reproached me, her voice broken. "I'm being honest," I replied without moving. "You wanted something better? Well then, go look for it. But don't come to my cabin to make a scene just because I finally accepted that your threat was nothing more than a bluff." "I came to fight for us," she insisted, taking an unsteady step toward me. "No," I corrected. "You came because you're realizing that no one else is going to put up with your nonsense." She stared at me with tears running down her cheeks, her makeup a mess. It was evident she had been drinking for hours. George, who had remained seated checking his phone, stood up and held it forward as if capturing evidence. "Ma'am, you should call an Uber to take you back. You are not fit to drive," he calmly warned her. "This is none of your business," she screamed at him, then turned back to me. "Do you really want to humiliate me like this in front of strangers?" "You made a fool of yourself," I retorted. "I didn't have to do anything." "I hate you," she spat out with empty fury. "Welcome to the club," I replied, shrugging. "Your mother is the president." She made a strange sound between a scream and a sob and turned to try to walk away dramatically. It would have been more impactful if she hadn't been staggering on 4-inch heels on a wooden dock. She barely took a few steps when one of the heels got caught between the planks. For a second, she was suspended, flailing her arms as if trying to regain balance or take flight. But gravity ended up deciding for her. She fell face first, hands not ready, no elegance, no grace. The impact echoed hollowly on the wood, a kind of reverberation that was lost in the lake. Her dress lifted, one of her shoes flew off and splashed into the water with a soft sound. She lay face down, making a muffled noise against the dock. George already had his camera activated before she hit the ground. Robert was doubled over, trembling from holding back his laughter. He turned red as if he were about to explode. Chloe awkwardly got up. She had small splinters stuck to her forehead, a fresh redness marking her cheek, and messy strands of hair hanging down as if she had fought an industrial fan. "You people are horrible." "Did you dare to take pictures of me? Did you?" she yelled at George from the ground. "Photos?" he repeated. "Maybe video. Demand him to delete it. Right now. Delete it." George checked his phone and shook his head with a tranquility that enraged her even more. "No, this is prime material." Robert could no longer contain himself and burst into choppy, air-gasping laughter. Chloe managed to stand up with one shoe on her foot and the other lost in the lake. The red mark on her face was already darkening, and her palms were full of splinters she was trying to remove to salvage some dignity. "I hate all of you. You're miserable," she said with a broken voice. She tried to walk away again and then remembered she only had one shoe. She took it off, threw it in my direction, and missed by several feet. The second shoe also ended up floating next to the first. "Now you're polluting the lake," George commented seriously. "We should call environmental conservation." Robert was sitting on the dock, completely incapacitated by laughter, barely able to breathe. Chloe walked away barefoot toward her car, her dress torn, her dignity shattered. "I'm going to call her an Uber," Robert said, reaching for his phone. "There's no way she can drive like that." "Do it," I replied, "and send me the video." "Already did," George intervened. "It's better than the one I recorded at my nephew's birthday when the clown was attacked by wasps." 10 minutes later, the Uber arrived. The driver stared wide-eyed at her bruised face and torn clothes. Robert reassured him, explained the situation, and I think he even gave him an extra tip. Chloe got in, still crying. Her car was left in my driveway. Both of her shoes were floating in my lake. Robert returned to the dock and let out a long sigh. "Wow, what a scene. When her lawyer receives the settlement proposal, she's going to faint." George was still reviewing the video. "I'm making stickers of this," he said, laughing again. We stayed fishing for almost an hour longer. The only sounds were the water gently hitting the wood and an occasional bird, until George let out another silent laugh at the recording. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Chloe received exactly what Illinois law dictates: half the home's value after selling costs, half the retirement plan contributions generated during the marriage, and her car. No alimony. the judge determined she was perfectly able to work. She tried to claim emotional distress and abandonment, but the judge dismissed both without hesitation. I spent $8,000 on lawyers. It was worth every cent. After selling the house, she permanently settled at Valerie's place. According to Teresa, who is more up-to-date on gossip than anyone, she got a part-time job at a bank and must be hating it. Patricia called me only once after everything was over. She accused me of ruining her daughter's life, of being heartless. I replied that she should have taught her daughter not to bite the hand that feeds her. She hung up without saying more. She never contacted me again. Robert and George come over almost every weekend. It has become a kind of unwritten tradition. Sometimes they show up unannounced. Other times they text me half an hour beforehand to say they're bringing beer or found an absurd promotion on takeout food. It's not like we do anything extraordinary. We watch a game, check the boat I keep on the dock, or simply talk as the evening falls over the lake. That simple routine, without drama or upheaval, ended up becoming something I value more than I imagined. As for me, I haven't dated anyone again. It's not rejection or resentment. I'm simply not in a hurry. I'm learning to enjoy the silence of the morning when I go out to the dock with a cup of coffee, to listen to the wind moving the trees, to calmly tidy my house. For the first time in a long time, I don't feel the need to fill the void with someone else. What I have is enough, along with the feeling that I am rebuilding my life from a firm foundation. If I've understood anything these past few months, it's that peace doesn't make noise. It doesn't arrive with grand announcements or dramatic changes. It settles slowly, almost without you noticing, until one day you find yourself living without fear of someone exploding over anything. And there, in that simplicity, I found something I thought I would never have again. A life that feels like mine. I don't know what comes next. Maybe a new project. Maybe someone who shows up when they're supposed to. But for now, this balance is enough. I have no interest in returning to the chaos I left. And if I ever build something with another person again, it will be because I want to, not because I feel obligated. For the first time in 7 years.